Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto and Naruto Next Generation discussion. And today, I want to touch on a fan theory that I strongly believe has a lot of merit to it. And this one isn't coming via my DMs or even my Patreon over on the Naruto Explain Patreon, but instead, this one's coming from my guy Itachi VV over on Twitter and TikTok, where he talks about the possibility of a connection being set up for the Minato one-shot chapter and the future of Boruto's manga. Now, you guys know exactly why this one definitely grabbed my attention, because I've been saying ever since we got confirmation that Minato was the one who Kishimoto will be drawing that one-shot for, that I believe that we couldn't rule out, number one, that this one-shot would be included in the manga volume for Boruto volume 21, and number two, that this Minato Gaiden stood a chance of being to Boruto's part 2 story the same thing that Kakashi Gaiden was to Naruto's story in part 2, where that was the story of how Kakashi got the Sharingan that was included in the manga directly after Naruto left to go train with Jiraiya, but before we got the chapters for Naruto part 2 and Naruto volume 28, where Naruto part 2 took place. So my guy Itachi VV appears to be on a similar wavelength, and I want to go over his theory and add my initial thoughts to it, because some of what he's saying actually lines up with something that Anime Balls Deep and myself talked about years ago. So what Itachi VV is saying, he starts by talking about the title for Boruto Part 2, saying that it's called Two Blue Vortex because it's ultimately going to reference Boruto and Kawaki's fate. He points out that this title is coming right after the release of the Minato Gaiden one-shot that focused on the concept of a spiral as one of the anchors of the story, stressing the importance of the spiral that we wake up to each day, doing the same thing day in and day out before you continue to grow as a person. Another spiral will join you to make a helix, which I do agree with this part of his analysis, and that leads to the second part of his breakdown where things get really juicy here. So he points out that the literal structure of DNA is that of a helix, and that Shikito, Kashi, and Koji, that all genes have a predestined fate that cannot be overcome. But Itachi VV says that the Minato one-shot offers a glimpse into how Boruto can break this nature in the way that Minato created the Rasengan. He says that when two fates, two DNAs, or two vortexes come together, they create a new fate, a new reality, a new helix, if you will. He says that this is ultimately what the title is referring to, the Star of Hope versus the Star of Destruction, in a battle that will shape the future of the shinobi world itself. Now, I replied to him saying that I definitely think he's onto something because of the concept of Boruto and Kawaki's karma being stated to resonate with one another in an unnatural way, and that we had the subplot in Boruto Part 1 where both of them vowed to find a way to remove each other's karma seal and free each other from the Otsutsuki curse. I said that I thought that the title Two Blue Vortex was also a reference to the two of them in the form of both of them being Uzumaki, since Uzumaki are associated with the vortex, and we have one Uzumaki in Boruto who was literally born as a natural born Uzumaki, and we have Kawaki, the one who is Uzumaki in name only but pretending to be a naturally born Uzumaki because of the Shinjutsu, with the Two Blue Vortex being a reference to the two Uzumaki vortexes colliding at some point, which that lines up with what he was saying, the Star of Hope versus the Star of Destruction. Now, as I said previously, his idea reminds me of something that myself and Anime Balls Deep did on a collaboration video years ago on ABD's channel that I wasn't able to record my parts for after we started scripting, so it ended up being a solo video on ABD's channel. But in that video on Anime Balls Deep, we talked about the concept of resonance between Boruto and Kawaki, and how Boruto, using so much science, actually offered a path to both of them losing their karma and freeing themselves of the karma seal through the concept of resonance. And we brought up the scientific theory that deals with radio waves and how this can be applied to Boruto and Kawaki ultimately getting rid of the karma seal, which at the time we didn't know that this was literally extracting DNA of the Otsutsuki into Boruto and Kawaki. It was something that we theorized might be possible, but we didn't know who the other Otsutsuki might have been for Kawaki, so we kept that part out of the video. However, now that we know for certain that this is what's involved, that genetics are actually involved in this, that old theory lines up with what Itachi VV pointed out about the DNA and the clash of the Star of Hope versus the Star of Destruction. When we've seen Boruto and Kawaki's karma resonate, it's usually been in a combat situation, or it's been in a situation where one of them had a heightened sense of emotion, which ultimately speeds up the extraction process progressed to such a level that even Ishiki, sitting inside of Jigen's body, got shocked when he saw how far Kawaki's karma had progressed in the short time he was away from Kara, and the only major change was that Kawaki was now interacting with Boruto. Otsutsuki, they've made vessels, many vessels, based on Amato's words. It's not uncommon for them to have more than one vessel at the same time, but in order to prevent multiple versions of an Otsutsuki from walking around, once they're reborn into the first vessel that hits 100% extraction, the other vessels lose their karma seal, and the extraction of the DNA and the overriding of the genetics that comes to a stop. It's the same principle as the Minato one-shot when you really sit down and you think about it. The concept of growing as a person and having another spiral join you in the form of a helix is literally what we're seeing happen. Boruto, by the time he met Kawaki, had just completed the arc set up during the events of the Boruto movie / the versus Momoshiki arc. Both his issues with his father as well as his understanding of what it meant to be a shinobi and accepting the usage of the scientific ninja tools as not being a replacement for ninjutsu but merely another tool that you use, such as a kunai, or as he did with Ao, literally a screwdriver. It was after this, and after this was done, that Boruto, who had just grown as a person while inside of his own spiral, Boruto was joined by another spiral, which was Kawaki, who was literally spiraling out of control, trying to escape from his own destiny as an Otsutsuki vessel, and it was then that Boruto manifested karma alongside Kawaki. At that very point, their fates, they became intertwined. Them meeting was basically a fixed point in the timeline that could not be escaped. Change scenarios however you want to change them. At some point, these two are going to meet. During this time, we've seen Kawaki lose the karma seal and regain it after showing signs of missing the power of the karma and being able to use it to protect those who he cares about while using karma, which is why he reawakened it in order to protect Naruto. Kawaki's now free of the Otsutsukification because Ishiki's soul is no longer inside of him. However, Boruto isn't as lucky because while the Otsutsukification is done in the sense that Momoshiki cannot resurrect using Boruto's body anymore, he can still hijack his consciousness but never fully resurrect. Momoshiki's soul is still attached to Boruto. While Kawaki's free, Boruto isn't free. One has escaped that fate completely while the other isn't fully free to that fate. Yet both of them are going to be needed to fully remove the karma seal from each other, and here's why. When Mito Uzumaki spoke to Kushina about the helix, she did so when speaking through the concept of love, obviously in reference to her late husband Hashirama Senju, and for Kushina it would be in reference to her future husband Minato. However, not all love is romantic, and this is something to keep in mind. Ada literally tells us in Boruto chapter 80 that Kawaki, despite everything that has happened, Kawaki still loves Boruto like a brother, and that's going to be important for a couple of reasons. And that is why, even though there are some people who are saying that Kawaki needs to die for what he's done, or that Boruto should cold his heart towards Kawaki and take revenge, they're missing the point. Boruto's never going to do that. Boruto can be frustrated with Kawaki all he wants, but he can't ever fully cut him off completely because he's going to need him. And just as their karma seals resonate to gain more power, as Boruto and Kawaki move in opposite directions, that same resonance is going to be what's needed to break the karma seal and remove the curse from both of them. The same way that Minato had come to the conclusion he needed to rotate the chakra in two different directions at an equal pace, it's going to be the same thing here. This actually fits into the Asian concept when it comes to balance. We literally see it in the form of chakra, with part of the chakra of a person in the Naruto world being comprised of yang chakra, i.e. physical energy, and the other being comprised of spiritual energy, i.e. yin chakra. We saw it in both the seals that Naruto and Sasuke had, the sun and the moon seals. Two opposite ends, both using either yang or yin chakra, but when they came together, they were able to unleash the six-pass Choppaku Tensei, one of the deadliest jutsu that somebody with the six-pass chakra can use. We saw it in the Naruto databook description for the Rinnegan itself, where in Naruto databook 3, it refers to the Rinnegan as a power that is viewed in universe as either the eyes of a god of creation or the eyes of a god of destruction or a god of war. It basically depended on the user, either salvation or destruction or war, similar to Boruto and Kawaki, the Star of Hope hope versus the star of destruction, but there was always an opposite end when you look at the Rinnegan itself, and it's not any different with these characters. Eventually, we saw Sasuke strike that balance of having gone from wanting to use the power of the Rinnegan for destructive reasons to force peace to actually fighting in the middle by using that power to maintain the peace that already exists. Boruto's story has played with the concept of breaking the cycle of life, death, and rebirth consistently. The entire samsaric cycle that was so key and fundamental to the Naruto story, down to even some of the character powers, especially the 6 past powers. The Otsutsuki clan's karma seal is their literal representation of that. They live, they implant the karma seal on a vessel before they die, and they're reborn into said vessel after time passes, and then they are reborn, updated from how they were before if the correct vessel was chosen. Yet Ishiki's dojutsu that Kawaki possesses, when you dig into it, is patterned after the Dharma wheel, is patterned after the 8 trifold path, and the introduction of Baryon mode, being able to literally erase a Biju from existence, is a sign of us moving away from those samsaric cycles of life, death, and rebirth, which is telling, given that Biju, much like the karma seal, represent those samsaric elements. And as Ikimoto told us, Boruto's main theme is about breaking away from familiar bonds and expectations, things associated with your parents, in order to find your own way. Naruto's story, as I said numerous times, is a story of samsara. Boruto's story is about going beyond samsara, and this is something that even more so now we have to keep in mind, now that we literally have Shibai Otsutsuki, someone who has actually accomplished this feat and no longer needs to use the karma seal. Boruto and Kawaki, they aren't trying to transcend to a point where they no longer need karma to, in the sense of being reborn, if you will, but they do need to reach a higher level themselves and transcend in order to reach a higher state, a Moska, if you will, where they transcend beyond the samsaric cycle in order to rid themselves of the karma seal altogether. Which, when you look into the story of the Buddha and the different levels of enlightenment that the Buddha reached, you can actually see where a lot of this is going. That being said, I really love to see how you guys feel about this subject. While you think that over, click here to watch these other Naruto Explained videos.